Hey everyone, I want to introduce you to a project by Amy Balkin, who is an artist that lives in San Francisco. And much of Balkin's work involves a social critique and asks us to consider how public space is used and how that use affects particular groups of people. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is specifically about a project called the Invisible-5. Invisible-5 is a self-guided audio tour along Interstate 5, which is the freeway that runs between San Francisco and Los Angeles. Notice that the title transposes interstate for invisible, pointing toward the various hidden aspects that surround the interstate. Those unseen aspects, which include trade, tourism, and migration, also include infrastructures for water, oil, and gas that are literally buried underneath the soil. Along the route of Invisible-5, one is likely to find intensive ranching, farming, and dairying, new housing develops, and waste dumping for that oil and gas industry that's buried underground. Because of the various stories that overlap along this corridor, Balkin chose to use the format of a museum audio tour to guide the listener along the highway landscape. Because she conceptualized it to be listened to while driving between San Francisco and Los Angeles, the completed format was a CD, with its tracks corresponding to particular areas one would pass as they drove. So as they were driving to Los Angeles to San Francisco, you could listen to the areas that you're driving through. So each track is a mini story about the people and communities that are fighting for environmental justice along the interstate that you're passing, that you're driving through. The stories include oral histories, field recordings, found sound, recorded music, and archival audio documents. So what I would like to do is to share two excerpts with you so that you can get an idea of how the project works. And we're just going to listen to a small snippet, so if you want to pursue this more, you could follow the link that is below. The first track that I want to share with you is an excerpt from track number 2 called West Oakland, which, you guessed it, refers to West Oakland. And as you're listening, I would like for you to listen to how Balkin layers various sounds to create a portrait of the area. You'll hear highway noise, children playing, birds chirping, and finally a woman who will begin to tell the story of the neighborhood. And this clip is about 2 minutes, so let's listen.
How you doing? Go ahead, go in there. You want some pizza?
Me too.
Huh?
Me too.
Go in there and get you some. And then you can draw your picture too.
No.
Hey, you got 2 more. Can you give them some pizza? And they want to draw. Here in West Oakland, we're near what used to be Highway 17, is now called 880 Freeway. And also we're right near the 580 freeway, as well as Highway 24, as well as 80. So we're kind of surrounded by all these freeways. Excuse me. Lots of diesel trucks. We unfortunately live right over by the post office as well. So when they get ready to go to work, they idle up the trucks. We have truckers that stop and park their trucks and leave them there overnight. When they idle up, that's going into my house or my neighbor's house.
Let's listen to one more. So this is track number 22, which is the second to last on the album, and it's called Los Angeles River. In this recording, which I'll include in its entirety, which is 3.5 minutes, notice how Balkin overlays field recordings of the river, but also uses ambient sounds to create a sense of drama in relation to the natural sounds of the river. Consider how she layers these sounds with those of the apparent experts, which you'll hear in the voiceover, who tell the story of environmental struggles that the river has had over the course of decades. Okay, let's listen.
Well, Los Angeles River, depending upon where you're counting from, is about 51, 52 miles long. And it basically drains the San Fernando Valley. The river is entirely channelized. The river was channelized by the Corps of Engineers starting in the late 1930s. It was straightened, essentially, and 3 million barrels of concrete were poured, and 17,000 people were paving the river by hand. It was a massive public works project. So it is probably the most fucked over river in the world, or one of them anyway. Friends of the Los Angeles River is a 40-year artwork to bring the LA River back to life, and I started it around 18 years ago, 19 years ago, I can't remember exactly. The piece was, by almost all accounts, an utter failure, but we knew that we had actually started something. Turning everything in terms of the river into a performance allowed me to do anything I wanted. Corps and the County Department of Public Works, which kind of together control the river, decided that in order to prepare for El Nino, they would just bulldoze every living thing in the river. And it got fairly ugly, you know, and very quickly. One of the low points for me in terms of the politics was a meeting with the head of the County Department of Public Works, which is a very powerful organization. And he kept calling the river a flood control channel. And every time he would call it a flood control channel, I would interrupt him and say, it's a river. Until we were both like, there's like 20 embarrassed people there as we're screaming flood control channel, river, back and forth at each other. They had this bulldozer, and I saw it, and I just tried to keep getting in front of it, and it was really stupid because I almost fell at one point under the bulldozer because I was in waders, and it was like I was in water and in mud, and there were all these birds that were being rousted from these trees that were being knocked over. So there was all this weird Alfred Hitchcock bird cackling and calling, and it was just a really surreal experience. I have no doubt that there'll be major restoration projects along the river. I think, the city passed a bond issue on election day to spend $500 million to clean up the river in various ways. Our goal is a swimmable river. Until yellow-billed cuckoos come back, and the steelhead. Really, the steelhead trout run is the standard. This was probably the southernmost steelhead run. And when that's back, then our work will be done. I would like to speak, if I may, on behalf of the four-leggeds and the flying ones and the swimming ones. That's more of a job for a poet than a politician, but ultimately that's what I am.
All right, so that's a little bit about Amy Balkin's Invisible-5 project, which is linked below, and hopefully that gives you one approach, one idea about how to tackle your audio postcard project.